James A. Garfield was the 20th President of the United States, serving for only 200 days before becoming the second president to be assassinated. Born on November 19, 1831, in a log cabin in Orange Township, Ohio, Garfield grew up in poverty after his father died when he was 18 months old. He worked on canal boats, attended college, and became a teacher before entering politics. Garfield served in the Union Army during the Civil War, rising to the rank of Major General. After the war, he was elected to Congress in 1862 and served for 17 years, becoming a leader in the Republican Party. In 1880, he won the Republican nomination for president on the 36th ballot at a deadlocked convention. He defeated Democrat Winfield Scott Hancock in the general election and was inaugurated on March 4, 1881. Garfield's presidency focused on civil service reform, education, and reconciliation between North and South. He appointed James G. Blaine as Secretary of State and worked to reduce patronage corruption in government jobs. One of his first major decisions was to appoint a collector of customs at the Port of New York, a position that led to conflict with Senator Roscoe Conkling and the stalwart faction of the Republican Party. Garfield sought to break the spoils system, believing government positions should be based on merit rather than political loyalty. On July 2, 1881, just 4 months into his term, Garfield arrived at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C., to board a train for a summer trip. He was accompanied by Secretary of State James G. Blaine and several family members. As Garfield walked through the station waiting room, a man approached him from behind. The man, Charles J. Guiteau, fired 2 shots from a revolver at close range. Garfield collapsed to the floor, severely wounded. Chaos erupted in the station as people rushed to the president's aid. Guiteau was immediately subdued and taken into custody. Garfield was carried to the White House, where doctors began treating his wounds. The nation held its breath, hoping the president would recover. Charles J. Guiteau was a 39-year-old disappointed office seeker who believed he deserved a diplomatic post for his support of Garfield during the campaign. Guiteau had a history of mental instability, failed business ventures, and erratic behavior. He had stalked Garfield for weeks, following him to church and other public places. On July 2, 1881, Guiteau waited at the railroad station and shot Garfield twice. One bullet grazed Garfield's arm, while the other lodged in his back near the spine. Doctors initially believed the wound was not fatal and attempted to remove the bullet. Garfield was moved to the White House, where he endured high fever and infection. Medical care in 1881 was limited, and the repeated probing of the wound with unsterilized instruments likely worsened his condition. Alexander Graham Bell devised a metal detector to locate the bullet, but it failed to pinpoint its exact position. Garfield lingered for 80 days, suffering from infections and blood poisoning. On September 6, 1881, he was moved by train to Elberon, New Jersey, hoping the sea air would aid recovery. He died there on September 19, 1881, at age 49. Guiteau was arrested immediately after the shooting and placed on trial in November 1881. He claimed he acted under divine inspiration and that the president would have died anyway from poor medical care. The trial lasted until January 1882, when Guiteau was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. He was hanged on June 30, 1882. The assassination highlighted the dangers of the spoils system and the need for civil service reform. Garfield's death galvanized public support for change. In 1883, Congress passed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, establishing a merit-based system for federal jobs. The law reduced patronage and limited political appointments. The Garfield assassination became a catalyst for one of the most significant government reforms of the late 19th century. The case also raised questions about mental illness and the responsibility of individuals who commit crimes under delusional beliefs. The assassination of James A. Garfield raised questions about whether Charles J. Guiteau acted alone or was part of a larger plot. Guiteau had no known accomplices, and the investigation found no evidence of a conspiracy. He claimed divine inspiration and believed the Republican Party owed him a position. Guiteau's mental state was debated during the trial, with some experts calling him insane and others arguing he was fully responsible. The jury rejected the insanity defense and convicted him. Some historians have speculated about broader motives tied to political factions within the Republican Party. Garfield's efforts to reform the civil service angered the stalwart wing, led by Senator Roscoe Conkling, who favored patronage appointments. Conkling resigned from the Senate in protest over Garfield's appointments, but no evidence links him or his allies to the crime. The case highlighted the risks of the spoils system, where government jobs were awarded based on political loyalty. Garfield's death accelerated reform efforts. The Pendleton Act of 1883 created the Civil Service Commission and required competitive exams for many federal positions. The law marked a major shift away from patronage and toward merit-based government service. The assassination also influenced security measures for presidents. After Garfield, protection for the chief executive became a more serious concern, though formal Secret Service protection for presidents was not established until after William McKinley's assassination in 1901. The Garfield case remains one of the least discussed presidential assassinations, overshadowed by Lincoln and Kennedy. In recent years, historians have re-examined the medical treatment Garfield received. Modern analysis suggests that infection from unsterilized instruments was the primary cause of death, rather than the bullet itself. This has led to renewed discussion about 19th-century medical practices and their role in the outcome. The case continues to be studied for insights into political violence, mental health, and the evolution of American governance. The assassination of James A. Garfield on July 2, 1881, cut short a presidency that had barely begun and left a lasting mark on American politics. Garfield's death led to the passage of civil service reform, reducing corruption and changing how federal jobs were filled. His brief time in office focused on integrity and reconciliation after the Civil War. The nation mourned his loss, and his funeral train traveled from Washington to Cleveland, where he was buried. The Garfield Memorial in Cleveland remains a site of remembrance. To this day in 2026, the case is studied for its role in government reform and the dangers of political violence. The assassination highlights the fragility of leadership and the consequences when personal grievances turn deadly. What do you think? Was Charles Guiteau solely responsible, or were there broader political forces at play? How did Garfield's death shape the country? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. If historical mysteries and high-profile cases like this keep you thinking, subscribe to our True Crime and turn on notifications for new deep dives every week. Because some events, no matter how brief, can change the course of history.